quite young, didn't you, in music? With your first band, Stupid Babies. And you were really young, about 11 years old. How did all that come about?
I was just the spirit of the times of making music in DIY music. There was stuff on top of the pops like the Flying Lizards and very experimental stuff kind of all around me. I was into the film, I don't think had come out yet, but the soundtrack of The Great Rock and Roll Swindle I found very inspiring. It was, the kind of punk rock could be anything, and it wasn't just, amphetamine, council estate, angry teenage music. It was sort of Malcolm McLaren just sort of opened it up to everything, rockabilly, disco, classical, and I was just precocious, I guess. I didn't know at the time, but I was into making music and quite inspired by the fact that you didn't have to actually be any good at it. And I had an older teenage brother who was in like punk bands and rock bands at school, and I wanted to join in, but I was too young and probably considered a irritating little twat by him and his mates. So I just went ahead and made stuff, and because there wasn't anyone else available, I got my 5-year-old brother to sing, and I fancied myself in the McLaren role, and there we have it. That was it, really, and I'm more proud of that than anything else I've ever done.
Right. I mean, how did you even get the address to send it to? Because you sent it off to, was it Fast Product?
Yeah, I think I must have owned Fast Product Records. I know the Mekons, Where Were You, was on Fast Product, and I'd probably buy like a 7-inch single a month when I could save up my pocket money, and I had that, and their other Earcom series, which I was on Earcom 3, I think I had Earcom 2 or Earcom 1, and the address must have been on there.
Oh, okay.
Or in one of the music papers, I don't know, but I just really thought that looked like the right label. I didn't realise it was like probably the hippest indie label in the country at the time. But yeah, I didn't know about the Human League connections or anything like that. But that was that really.
It really took off, didn't it? Because John Peel kept playing it, didn't he? And it got featured. Was it Single of the Week in NME as well?
I don't know if it was Single of the Week, and I don't think a later thing I did, like, about 10 years later, but seemed like eons. No, it's about 8 years later, but seemed like eons in those days when you're young. 8 years seems like a bat of an eyelid now, but 8 years later I had a band called Discord Daccord, and that was Single of the Week in NME. We did a cover of X-Ray Specs Identity, where we just wholesale stole the whole groove and bass line off a Mantronix track. We loved Mantronix. I loved that. The electro side of hip-hop. I kind of loved a lot of hip-hop in those days. I loved the Beastie Boys too, and we were sort of trying to emulate them to some extent. and Zig Zig Sputnik. We were kind of, in our dreams, or in my dreams, we were like a kind of amalgamation of the Beastie Boys and Zig Zig Sputnik. But listening back, I mean, it was kind of shit, but I refreshed that track a couple of years ago, and Celeste, who's Polystyrene's daughter, gave it her blessing and said, don't worry about sample clearance or anything. She really loved it, and that made me very happy that she'd condoned it. As did Polly when she was alive.
Yeah.
We got kind of friendly with her, although it was quite hard because of her condition, mental condition. So yeah, sorry, I digressed a bit there, but
no, that's all right. So where was I going with this? Oh, Johnny Slugs was involved with that as well, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah. How did you get involved with him?
My brother introduced me to him on my 19th birthday. There's this guy that I already had the band Discord Daccord with my brother. I don't think he just introduced me to Johnny because he thought we would get on well, which we did. We're still friends to this day, 37 years later, or 36 years. But I got Johnny in to Discord Daccord to be my co-singer. Really, he should have been the lead singer, and I should have just done the music with my brother. It would have probably ended up sounding better, but we used to take turns to sing, while the other one, we had a Wendy house on stage, and the other one would be in the Wendy house doing the costume change while the other one was singing. Johnny was a much better showman, performer than me. I used to just get really blind, paralytic drunk to the point where sometimes I didn't even know that I was actually on the stage, or what I was supposed to be doing, which was a bit unfortunate, not very professional. No one was getting paid, so I didn't consider we had to be professional. Yeah, that was kind of good with the outfit changes and stuff.
Yeah.
We played some quite interesting places, like Mutoid Waste parties, the Sex Maniacs Ball a couple of years in a row, which was good. And kind of squats around Hackney and Camden, and it was very exciting for me. Our last gig was supporting Nitzer Ebb at Camden Palace.
Right.
And by which point I was kind of really bored of Discord Daccord, and I was just totally kind of just completely into the whole acid house explosion. This would have been 1988, and I just kind of got completely into that, and kind of a bit bored of trying to be Beastie Boys music.
When did you first come across the music? Where did you find it?
The music?
Yeah, the acid house stuff.
On pirate radio.
Oh yeah.
LWR. I just started to hear random tracks on the radio, that were kind of far and few between, and I'd sort of listened through hours of what I felt was kind of sludge soul, kind of 80s soul. Wasn't really my thing, and I'd sit through that waiting for someone to play a house track, which just sounded like music from another planet, and kind of what what I liked about Zig Zig Sputnik, seeing them live, I felt that it was that kind of attitude, but done much better.
Yeah.
Like what Zig Zig Sputnik should have ended up sounding like, but they kind of. I mean, I love seeing them live in the early days. I just moved to London, and it was so exciting, and their whole look and their whole sort of mission statement appealed to me, and their raw live sound was really exciting. And but as much as I love Giorgio Moroder, I think he overcooked it. It just got they tried to cram in too many concepts, and he kind of made the sound a bit too expensive, overproduced sounding.
Yeah,
because most of the things he does are fantastic, and that. I mean, the first single actually was amazing. With the Blade Runner and Clockwork Orange samples and stuff. I mean, I always find that I still find it inspiring, and I still kind of reference that in my head on pretty much everything I do.
So how did you come about writing your own remixes and acid house tracks? So in the guitar days, obviously you can just pick up a guitar and it's not that expensive, but did you have to buy a lot of electronic equipment to start making that sort of music?
Well, the Stupid Babies, it was a really terrible deal, but I wasn't to know better because I was 11, and my parents who had to sign it on my behalf had no idea about music business, or they just saw, oh, how exciting, our son's procured himself a record contract. But it did generate enough money to buy an old second-hand, old upright piano, which is what I taught myself to play, like rudimentary chords and stuff. And then when I was doing Discord Dackle, my brother is actually super clever, and he would make stuff, like he could make stuff from Maplin components, make samplers and stuff, and he got some Roland gear, I think it was called a 202, like micro composer or something, like stuff that costs a fortune now, like collector's items, but that stuff was really actually cheap in those days. He even had 303s and stuff, which is super rare and sought after now, but probably 50 quid, or I don't know. My brother got gear, and I got another guy my brother introduced me to, called Jimmy Polo, came over from Chicago in 1988 because of the acid house explosion, and it wasn't such an explosion in Chicago, it was just a kind of club, it was a scene, the local scene, and he came over to kind of, he's from the early Chicago house scene, and he's another person that my brother thought that I would hit it off with, and again he was correct, and becoming good mates with Jimmy Polo and going round to acid house parties in London in '88, and there was a night at Dingwall's called High on Hope, which wasn't so much acid house, it was the more serious, deep, soulful house side, and we used to go there because we lived in adjoining bedsits on Camden High Street, so we would just walk up the road to Dingwall's on a Thursday or Wednesday evening, I think it was, and across the road to the then Camden Palace, which occasionally had people like Colin Favour DJing, and got really absorbed into the acid house thing. But he had this keyboard called an Ensoniq. His was what was it? ESQ. I can't remember what it was called, but he had this Ensoniq sequencer, which apparently were all the rage in Chicago, and it was an 8-track sequencer, and basically he taught me how to use it, and I played stuff in, you kind of just record stuff in like a tape recorder, and you could sort of edit your bum notes, or not even bother in a lot of cases. If you played in a riff that had a vibe, even if it had bum notes, or it was just like whatever the speaker. I played some chords on this piece he was doing, which became this record called Better Days, which a lot of people consider a house music classic now. It's been sampled a lot, my piano riff, and it's been covered, and then I got one of those myself. I think I had to get a bank loan, because I definitely didn't have the grand, or whatever it was at my disposal. I think I got a bank loan, and it was this, like, the then government had this enterprise allowance scheme.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Which, they had it to basically make the unemployment figures look less worse. And I got on that scheme, that was part of it. I had to go and
You had to have £1,000 in the bank, didn't you, to get it?
That's what you had to do, yeah. And I went to see this bank manager on Camden High Street. My life pretty much revolved around Camden High Street. I watched Camden High Street from looking out onto Camden High Street almost overnight, go from sort of this sort of goth, shoegaze, grey and black and dull sort of thing to suddenly it was awash with like day glow and smiley faces and everything. And I really, literally, like from one weekend to the next, it was like I felt like I was really in the eye of the storm, like meeting people like Jimmy Polo, who was then introducing me to my like house music idols, and it was surreal for me that I'd have, people that in my bedroom playing on my synth who were like, it might as well have been like Little Richard or like, or the Beatles, the Rolling Stones would have been, actually I would have liked more, in my bedroom playing on my instrument. It was just mind-blowing and inspiring too. I was just so inspired by going to the clubs and those early acid house warehouse raves that were just everywhere. I mean, round Camden and beyond in the suburbs. I remember going to some party with Jimmy Polo that was, I think the area was called Queensway. I don't even know where that is. It was on the tube, and coming back on the first tube on Sunday morning, sitting with Robert Owens, on the tube back into London, and it was just weird and surreal and inspiring. And also that year I went to Ibiza for the first time, which is probably where I first really heard, really good house music played in clubs. And that was Johnny Slut and his boyfriend invited me to go on holiday with them to Ibiza, and I'd heard sort of, oh, this is where, this is the best place for acid house. I mean, I used to go to Heaven, the London club, and there was, it was like on the pirate radio, house music was starting to sort of filter through, but, my chronology of that period is a bit... can't remember if that 87, 88... I know 88 was my first year in Ibiza, and I know 88 was when I met Jimmy Polo, and he taught me how to use this sequencer. Because actually, I'm a really... I'm rubbish at learning anything, and I was quite amazed at myself for being able to get my head around it, because I'd get Porter Studios and stuff, like 4-track tape machines, and I was so shit at it. But I think my technical incompetence has actually been a help to me, because I'm still the same kind of musician, lo-fi, experimental, uneducated. I mean, like, in, skill, very low skill level, and it makes my music more interesting, because I just try and slam things together that shouldn't work. And even like that Killer record, I had someone years and years later, some sort of songwriter bloke, going about how I had the minor chords going over the major, and I didn't know I did that. I just play stuff, and if it sounds good, it sounds good. I'm not fussy, and that must be from the whole DIY thing of my childhood, and the punk rock saying it doesn't matter,
Well, Killer originally didn't have a singer, did it? How did Seal get involved with that?
Well, we were just both on the rave scene. I mean, from 88 to 89, I became even more sort of involved. I wasn't just a punter sort of dabbling in music making. I suddenly, very rapidly, went from taking my drum machine and sequencer into club environment, and people really, totally, to my surprise, totally reacting in a very super positive, enthusiastic way, and went in a matter of weeks from playing to 50 people to playing to 7,000 people, and kind of improvised, and Seal walked in when I was playing at Santa Pod racetrack, in the hangar, where I don't know what it was, but it was Santa Pod racetrack, and they had a big rave there called Sunrise 5000, and Seal walked in and heard me and decided that I was the one that there was hardly anyone doing live kind of stuff. It was all about the DJs, and I wasn't on stage. I was just in the DJ console with my equipment plugged directly into the DJ mixer. So he walked in and heard this, and at the same gig, I was kind of friendly with them, and I'd known them for a couple of years, but Jimmy Cauty from the KLF said, do you want to sign to KLF Communications? And I really wish I had, but my whole life might have taken a very different course if I'd signed to an indie label, and hadn't. Seal approached my flatmate, who's my flatmate and MC occasionally when he could be bothered to turn up. This guy, Daddy Chester, gave him a demo cassette at another event and said, can you pass that on to Adam? I'd really want to be a singer. And Daddy Chester got very excited and was going, oh God, you should work with this guy. And I was like, well, I'm not really looking for a singer, but such was the times. I just randomly hook up with people, and then I became friendly with Seal. I mean, obviously, I thought his voice was amazing. I thought, yeah, maybe could do something. And then I became friendly with him, and he used to crash on my sofa sometimes. We were going to the same clubs, same sort of circles of friends on that scene, and I just said, come down the studio and try something, like, let's see what happens. And he came and he had these lyrics that just kind of fitted really well onto my piece of music. I mean, the lyrics are actually kind of a bit stock, you know, like most big tracks at the time had those sorts of lyrics about brothers and sisters and being free and doing what you want to do. And but, you know, I love that sentiment. That's what I was all about, and totally immersed in that. So
it took off really well. I mean, obviously it did. It got to number 1, didn't it? I mean, how did that change your life?
Well, obviously I was better financially. It just happened so fast for me. I didn't really have I didn't really know how to handle it so well, you know. I was surrounded by people I didn't know if I could trust or not, and often I shouldn't have trusted. I got quite royally fleeced by certain people, and it made, as it was so successful, it kind of made expectations of what I would do very high. I didn't, you know, I just released an album of the best tunes of what I'd been playing live around the rave scene. So I didn't have an album ready for Killer, and I kind of cobbled something together in a few weeks, and I was really out of my depth in those big studios. It was all the record company, because they really didn't understand what I was doing, or the whole scene of that style of music, or that whole thing either. So they would have me in studios that cost $1,000 a day, with full of equipment that I had no idea how to operate, and I actually, but I couldn't I would get a better sound recording onto cassette in my bedsit than recording with all those expensive SSL mixing desks and everything. But I couldn't, it just didn't, I couldn't even admit that to myself, because it didn't seem...
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That just cannot be. And the record company definitely weren't going to... Look, I don't want to go in, you know, Mayfair Studios or whatever. I'm just going to record it on to a cassette on the hi-fi I bought from Argos catalogue. So, yeah, it was just all a bit... it all became a bit unmanageable for me. But, you know, it was great. That it's a blessing, because that song's been covered so many times, and it's kind of just kept me going and enabled me to carry on being like a bedroom producer, making whatever I want, and which is just what I like to do with my life, is just potter about making music.
You've done quite a few remixes, haven't you, for quite famous people, like Elton John and that sort of thing. What happens there? Do they approach you, and how does it work?
I can't. That Elton John thing. I remember I was kind of summoned to his suite in a hotel in Hollywood when I was working there on that album that I was just saying, that the rush to cobble together thing to go with Killer, and I was summoned to his hotel suite, and I mean, I wasn't an Elton John fan by any means. It's just that I thought, this will really impress my mum and stuff. and it really, I think a lot of the people I really pissed off the people on the rave scene that had kind of supported me and put me up there, because I did my follow-up to the working with Seal was me singing an Elvis song, which really I can't believe the record company even allowed that, because I could have had my pick of already successful singers, like good any singers that I'd met from the punk era, like I don't know, people like Mick Jones, or who I was with, or soulful singers like or there was like untold people around the club scene, up and coming to I could have really done anything, and I just for some fucking reason thought it would be a good idea to sing an Elvis song over one of my beats. But it was kind of like, my all-time favourite singer is Alan Vega from Suicide, who I got into before I heard Suicide, his first solo album, Jukebox Babe. It's still my favourite album, and that's still in my top 10 favourite songs. And it was a bit like, I more in depth realised his influences and what it was all about, but I just thought it's a bit like an Elvis impersonator over kind of repetitive electronic music, which is kind of what I like, Zig Zig Sputnik, and it was, it was all me, sort of, I don't know. But anyway, it didn't go down well with my then following at all. And then I had the audacity to do something with Elton John, which all I did really was a remix that wasn't very good, but Smash Hits and all that lot made a big, massive deal of it, and put us on the cover of Smash Hits together, and he would invite me to his parties, in Kensington Roof Gardens, and I'd meet Brian May and Anita Dobson, and all this sort of weird, surreal stuff. It was like I was just living inside some sort of weird television program or something. And it was, that I was slated for, all I did was a remix for him and a photo session, and I was slated, but then a couple of years later, it's all like cool, Elton John's all cool and working with Eminem and Moby and all these people. When I did it, it was like an absolute, the forbidden worst thing. But anyway, didn't really. It's just funny. It's just funny to look back on now. Funny life experience, and realizing how properly how unastute I am, career-wise and business-wise and all that, and I it's kind of I mean I've worked with people across the whole spectrum. But like I work with people like Mark Stewart from the pop group, and he's a good friend, and people really from sort of the dark side, for want of a better phrase, to people like Elton John.
Yeah.
It's very, very all incongruous, kind of nonsensical, disconnected kind of stuff. But I like that about my life.
Do you think you'll ever retire?
Not really, unless I get incapacitated by like physical pain or something, or go deaf. I mean, it's all I really. It's my only interest really is making music. It's like I kind of consider it my hobby as well as my job, and it's my passion and my reason of being.